Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to our webinar today, Year End Part 2, where we go through processing payroll year end. My name's Duncan, I'm one of your presenters today, and I am joined by my colleague Alice, who will be co-presenting alongside me. And we also have a team of experts standing by in the background, ready and waiting for your questions. So Alice is going to come back a little bit later to take us through the year end process. Let's now take a look at what we're going to cover in the webinar. So I'm going to start things off with an introduction to your payroll year-end key dates, and then I'm going to give you a reminder of the preparation checklist that we ran through in part 1. We'll then hand over to Alice, who's going to give us a demo of the full payroll year-end process, including the final submission of the year and producing those P60s. I'll then return to take you through the steps to get ready for the new tax year, which will include installing the NI legislation update, which we have launched today. And then I'll run through what's changed in terms of legislation for the new tax year, 2024 to 25, before Alice will come back and show you what's new in the software in terms of some of our software improvements. And then hopefully we'll have some time at the end to pick out a few questions and answer those live for you as well. So let's get on with our introduction, and I'm going to take you through a timeline of key dates and some deadlines for payroll year end. So the first date to be aware of was the 4th of March, and this was when we launched the payroll year end update. So it was released as an automatic update and as a download via our help center, and that is now a mandatory update. So if you haven't already installed it, you should be prompted to do so when you access the program. The 6th of March was the spring budget announcement, and there has been a change to national insurance rates for the employee, which will take effect from the 6th of April. And as a reaction to that, we have released a legislation update. So it's not a full program update, it's a legislation update that you can access in version 30, which will update the NI legislation for the new tax year. And we're going to cover that later on in the webinar today. The next key date is the 5th of April. That is the last day of the current tax year. And by that date, you should have completed payroll for your last pay date of the tax year and have sent your FPS for that pay date. Then the following day, the 6th of April, is the first day of the new tax year. So any pay date from the 6th of April onwards would fall into the 24 to 25 tax year. We then have the two deadlines. The 19th of April is the deadline to do your final submission of the tax year. And Alice will show you how simple it is to do that in the demonstration. And then the second deadline is the 31st of May. And by that date, you should have issued a P60 to all employees that were employed by you as at the 5th of April. So employees who left before the 5th of April would not get a P60, they will get a P45 instead. So just to explain what we cover in the webinar, so part 1 was all around install and prepare, and we do have other dates available for that session if you'd like to join us live, or you can watch a recording. And in part 2, today's session will be focused on the year-end process, so final submission and P60s, as well as the steps to get you ready for your first pay date in the new tax year. By way of a recap, I'm just going to quickly run through the preparation checklist that we covered in part 1. So do make sure you've completed all of these steps before you move on to the year-end process. So step 1 was to install your year-end update. So you need to be using version 30, which has all the latest year-end reports and the legislation settings ready for the new tax year. Step 2 is to process and update all periods within the 23 to 24 tax year. So check what your last pay date of the tax year will be, and you can check the last updated column in your employee list. Step 3 is to process any leavers who've left before the 5th of April and have received their final pay. So usually you do that at the time they leave, but have a quick scan through, make sure there's no one you've missed. Step 4 is to submit your FPS for the last pay date of the tax year and EPS if required for month 12. And then the 5th step to prepare was to back up your payroll data, so you've got a point to restore back to should you need to if anything was to go wrong. So if you can tick off all those steps, you are then ready to run the year-end process. And at this point, I'm going to hand back to Alice, who's going to take you through that process in the next demo. So back to you, Alice.
Thank you so much, Duncan. So now that we've looked at those key dates and the preparation checklist, we can now move on to process payroll year end. So payroll year end in Sage 50 Payroll, it's just a case of working through a series of steps, which I'd like to outline now before we go into the demonstration. So you can see that on the screen at the moment in that screenshot. Starting with choosing the tax year, which this year will be the 23-24 tax year, as that's the year that we're ending. Next step is your internet submission. So this is the final submission, which needs to be submitted by that deadline of the 19th of April. It's an employer payment summary, or EPS, but it is different to a normal EPS that you would submit if, for example, you were reclaiming parental payments. After this, you'll produce your P60s, which must be distributed to your employees by the 31st of May. And that is a few different ways that you can produce P60s in payroll. So I'll give you a bit more information on those different options shortly as well. You then got to back up your data. Now this is super important in general, but even more so around payroll year end, hence why it has its own step. And after that, it's completing year end, which is just a case of clearing down the year-to-date values for the current tax year. And it also moves your process date on to the 6th of April, so you're ready and in the new tax year. Now, it's important to know as well that when I say the year-to-dates are cleared down, nothing is deleted. The information is still in payroll, but it's now last year's figures, so they're cleared down, ready for the new tax year's year-to-dates. And then last but not least is to distribute the year-end returns, which brings up a little kind of reminder window with that 31st of May deadline and a little message to say that you've finished your year-end process. So back to the P60s. As I mentioned, there is a few different ways that you can produce them in Sage 50 Payroll. You've got the option to upload online P60s to Sage HR, as you would if you use the online payslips. Or this is Online Bureau if you're an accountant. So they'd go onto the online portal and each employee would be able to access them, whether that's online or through the mobile app. You can also email P60s, as you would if you already email payslips using, for example, Outlook or Gmail. This will use the same settings as well that you've already got kind of configured for email payslips. So if your employees' email payslips are password protected or something like that, the P60s will be also. You've also got the option to print the P60s as well onto plain paper. There's no need for stationery anymore. And in fact, Sage and HMRC no longer provide that. So it's a nice, quick process to print them off too. So that's kind of an outline of the steps to process payroll year end. I just want to dive into the demonstration now and we'll go through those. So as you can see, we're now into payroll and you can see that in the last updated and last FPS date column, it's the 31st of March, which was my last pay date of the tax year. So we can see that I've completed that. And I've also done that preparation checklist, which Duncan mentioned earlier. So I'm now going to move on to processing payroll year end. Now, first things first, I need to change my process date to the 5th of April. This is just the date that we would recommend to process your year end tasks on, just mainly for reporting purposes, really. So mine was still my last pay date. So I'm just going to change that to the 5th of April. And we're going to see as well in the bottom right corner here that that's confirmed as the 5th. So now what I'll do is go and select the payroll year end section. And here you can see those steps which I showed you in the presentation as well on the process map, which I'll demonstrate now for you. So remember, at the point of doing these steps, you should have already prepared for your year end with those steps Duncan mentioned. So processing your final pay run, process any levers, submitting your last FPS and things as well. But once you've done that, these steps here are everything you need to complete your year end. So the first step is to choose the tax year that we want. This does normally default to the last payroll year end that's been done. So like mine, yours might say 22-23. That's absolutely fine. In order to change it, all you need to do is click on it. And you will get a little message just asking if you'd like to include all employees who've been paid in the tax year, which I do, so I'm going to click on yes. And in here, just make sure that it's the 23-24 tax year for this year, and that the report date is set to the 5th of April 2024. The only other thing in here is the cessation date. So if your company has ceased trading, just pop in that cessation date and click OK. And you can now see a message confirming that the tax year has been changed. The next step is that final submission. And this is the final submission, the last one of the tax year. You can just ignore this window as well. It's just because I'm in the training room. And I'll show you as well how you can tell that it's definitely the final one. So got the normal kind of gateway registration and company details. And if you attended part 1, you'll notice I mentioned in each of the kind of submissions, this final submission for the year said no. Now, because we're now in the payroll year end process, and this is the final submission, you can see that's confirmed as yes. So we're good to go and submit that. Another thing as well to notice in that submission, if I just bring up that window again, actually, we do sometimes get asked about the employment allowance window. So you can see here it just says NA. That is normal. So it's completely normal for it to say NA, as this is the end of the tax year. So you apply for employment allowance in the beginning of a tax year. So once you've completed payroll year end and moved into the new tax year, that's when you would then apply for employment allowance again. And Duncan will show you how to do that a little bit later. So that is step 2 complete, and it's now time to produce P60s. So whether you're printing, emailing or uploading, this is the button that you would click on. And you can see those different options in here. I'm going to click on print or email first. I'll show you these first of all. And you can use this drop down at the top to select print or email. So let's say we wanted to email the P60s. And as I mentioned before, this will use the same configuration settings you've got set up for the emailing payslips. So if you email via Outlook and maybe the payslips go to your drafts folder, for example, or maybe the password protected, the P60s will be as well. And if you've got any employees on hold, as long as they've been paid in the tax year, they will get a P60. So as long as they've been paid and haven't left, they'll still get one. So you are more than okay to leave employees on hold during year end. So all I would do at this point is click email and then off they would go. If I wanted to print them instead, I could just change that drop down at the top, tick this little box to say that I'd like to preview them before printing, and just click on print. Now it does come up with a message asking if I want to include everybody, even if they have been set up for online services or email. So if you didn't want them to be included, just click no. But if you did want to still produce, for example, a printed P60 for everybody, even if they do have the online services set up, then just click yes, and that will still include everyone. And here is the preview of the P60s. So that's produced everybody's. And this will print out exactly as they are here. And remember, that's onto plain paper, so there's no stationery needed anymore. You can also see in the top left, you've got the option to print them, to export them as well. So if you wanted to save them maybe as a PDF, you absolutely could. If you wanted, for example, a company copy of everyone's P60s. And so you've got those options there as well. So I'll just close this. So that's printing or emailing. But we also obviously have the uploading P60s, which so far in the webinar seems to be the most common way that people will be doing their P60s this year. So today we'll be uploading them to Sage HR. But like I mentioned, if you are an accountant, this will be a slightly different process using your online bureau portal instead. Now we do have a different webinar on payroll year end for any of you who are accountants, with a few more dates coming up as well, where that process will be gone through. So I'll click on upload. And you can see the 6 employees that I've got set up for online services here. I want everybody selected, so I'll just tick that box at the top and click on upload. And something to remember as well, if you're using Sage HR, unlike the payslips where you can schedule a day for them to be published, the P60s can actually only be published immediately. So if you didn't want them to go up at the point if you're doing your payroll year end, you wanted them to go up on a certain day, for example, feel free to complete all of the other steps of your payroll year end and then simply come back to payroll another day, set your process date back to the 5th of April, and you can do the produce P60 step then. Now, they've been successfully published, which is great. And if you'd like to view them, you absolutely can. So you can either click on Access Online Services here, which is going to bring you to log into your portal. Or if you're already logged in like myself, I'll just bring over that portal and you can view them on here. So this is the admin portal, so my kind of admin user. And you can see I've got the 6 employees' profiles here who've had their P60s uploaded. So if I wanted to view an individual's P60, I could click on their profile and go to the payslips and P60s section. And you can see as normal, they've got the payslips here, which you can of course download if you wanted to. And just at the top, you've got this tab for P60s. So you can see we've got last year's and of course the one we've just uploaded for this year. If I wanted to download that, I absolutely could. I can download them both if I wanted to. And I would actually like to view this P60, so I'll click on View. And we can see that here. So we've got the employee's name, NI number, of course the income details. And if we scroll down a little bit more about the statutory payments as well, so we can see this employee had some statutory paternity pay as well, the full 2 weeks there. And if I wanted to save that as a PDF, I absolutely can. Now, so that's kind of for an individual, but if you come to the payslip section on the left and go to P60s again, just at the top, you can actually see all 6 of the employees' P60s, which I've just uploaded. So you can see the published date of the 12th of March. And if I wanted to download all 6 of them as one PDF file, just click on this at the top or download them as a zip file. And if you've got quite a few employees as well, the search option is actually a really good way of finding them too. So if I wanted to find employee number 1's P60 for last year, I can just type in 1, which is in this case their surname, but on the P60s tab, and I can see both of them there. So that's how to view the P60s on the online portal, and this is for the admin portal as well. Now, if I wanted the employee to see the employee is going to see, I've actually logged in as the employee. So this is employee number 1. So when they log in, this is what they'll see. They've got their dashboard there. And if they go to their profile, of course, they can only see their own P60 and payslips and things, not like the admin, which can see everybody's. And if we click on payslips and P60s, again, this is just for the individual, and they can see their own P60s there. Same again, nice simple layout there. And of course, downloadable if they wanted to as well. And don't worry as well if you accidentally upload them more than once. So if you do produce the P60s and upload them twice, it won't upload loads of duplicates of them. It will just overwrite the one that's already there. So it keeps the portal nice and clean and tidy. So that's the online P60s. And now that we've produced them, you can see this little tick box here to say that I've produced my P60s. So I'll click on this and click close. And that is us halfway through the process. So next step 4 is to back up our data. Very important, hence why it has its own step as well. So we'll click on this and I'm just going to name this something appropriate. So if we say payroll year end complete, for example, just so I know exactly what kind of the payroll was at when I took this back up. And that should be nice and quick. And as easy as that, step 4 is now done as well. So yeah, also I would advise if you do save this somewhere else other than, for example, just on your computer or laptop. So if if anything was to go wrong with your computer or laptop, you do still have that data backed up somewhere else, so you can restore that and just kind of continue with where you were. Nice little safety net there. And one of the last steps we'll move on to is completing your year end, which you just click on. And this just confirms it's going to remove those year-to-dates for the current tax year, as I mentioned. So they will go to historical data. So remember, they're not going to be deleted. So we'll click yes to this. And it's just a reminder to check your employees' tax codes as well. So we'll click OK. And if you've got any employees with company cars or anything, you do have the option to update the mileage records for them. But I don't have anyone with a company car, so I'll click on no. And that's that step done as well. So tax year end clearing completed. And it's just another reminder that those year to dates for the current tax year have been archived for historical data storage. You'll notice as well, now that we've done complete year end, just in the bottom, the process date's now moved on to the 6th of April 2024. So that's us ready and in the new tax year to get ready and start processing. Last step as well, just as I mentioned, distribute year-end returns. So this is just a little reminder of those deadlines, just that you must distribute your P60s, of course, by the 31st of May. And a little congratulations as well that you've finished your year-end process. So we will close that. And that is payroll year-end start to finish. So it's as easy as that really. Just work through the steps left to right, and that's us done. And as long as you've done the preparation steps, it is just a case of this. So we're now ready to kind of get on with getting ready for the new tax year. But before I do pass you over to Duncan, I just want to tell anyone who wasn't at our part 1 webinar of a little change that's happened since version 30. So once you've completed payroll year end, if you're like me, you'll just click back to the payroll section and you see this process map does stay on the screen. Of course, you can resize it, but if you wanted to turn it off, normally you would have gone to the top right to change view. Now you'll notice this isn't there anymore. It's still an option, it's just moved. So it's now in view, the view option, and change view. And to turn it off, if you just select the employee list, that turns it back off again. And of course, if you wanted to turn it on, just go back to view, change view, and process map. A little bit of a top tip as well, if you do want a bit more of a quicker way or just another option to do that. If we turn that process map back on, you can do it that way. So just click on payroll year end and back to payroll. And then to turn it off, just click employee, because that section doesn't have a process map, and click back to payroll. So a few different options there. And now that we've completed payroll year end as well, you'll also notice that my lever, so employee number 3, has also disappeared from my list. And that's just because I've hidden historical levers. So I can see them again if I change that criteria. They're now back. But if you wanted to tidy up your list there, just tick to hide historical levers and they'll be removed from the list. So with payroll year end done and dusted, we will bring Duncan back to get ready for the new tax year.
Thanks very much, Alice. So you've just seen the year-end process there end to end, and you can get on with that just as soon as you're ready. You don't need to wait for any of these deadlines or indeed the end of the tax year. Once you've completed all the preparation, you can get that out of the way, and you can then start thinking about getting ready for the new tax year, which begins on the 6th of April. So I'm going to take you through a checklist, which you can also read on our support hub. And we have 5 steps to get you ready for the new tax year. So step number 1 is to check that you're using the correct version of payroll. So you need to have installed the year-end update, which is version 30. Step 2 is to update your national insurance rates for the new tax year by retrieving a legislation update, which I'm going to show you in the demo. Step 3 is to update your employees' tax codes. So there's one global change, and you may need to apply some individual tax code notices if you've received them. Step 4, apply for employment allowance if applicable if your business qualifies for that. And step 5, to set up small employers relief, again, if applicable. So the version you should be using is version 30. If you can see the home screen that Alice was showing you, you know that you've installed it because that's only available in version 30, but you can do a version check by clicking help and then about, and you can check underneath program details. Now, as long as you've got version 30 installed, you're then ready to update your national insurance rates for the new tax year. So in the spring budget, it was announced that the main rate of employees' national insurance will be reducing from 10% to 8% effective from the 6th of April. So there wasn't much notice of this change. It's just a month turnaround to get that change in place. And for that reason, we've made this update available as a legislation update, meaning that you won't need to go through a full installation process again. You just need version 30. And then once you're on version 30, you would log into any of your payrolls with a username that has access to all employees. You would go to the Tools menu and you would click Check for Legislation Updates. You'll then confirm that you want to see if there are any updates available for current legislation. You click Yes to that message, and then it will retrieve the NI bans and rates legislation, and that will then be applied to the current payroll you logged into, and also to any other payrolls that use the same username and password that you're logged in as. So I want to show you this step because it is really important that you do this before you start any payrolls in the new tax year, and you can do it straight away. The legislation is date sensitive, so that new rate will only be effective from the 6th of April. So I'm just going to switch my camera off to give you a full screen view. I'm already logged into a payroll. So to retrieve and apply this legislation update, all you would do is click Tools. You then click Check for Legislation Updates. You click Yes to continue. And that will check our online legislation service, and you should see this message. So a legislation update has been found. Would you like to apply changes now? You would go ahead and click Yes. Now you'll then see a log file, so a summary of the changes that have been made. And if you do have a multi-company payroll, I would strongly recommend that you print this log out, because this will tell you exactly which of your companies have been updated and which haven't, and for various reasons. So you can see that company 1 here has been successfully updated. Company 2 has not, because the user has a different password in company 2. And company 3, the one I'm currently logged into, has been updated. So if you print this out, you'll know which other companies you need to log into, and then you repeat the exact same step, Tools, and Check for Legislation Updates. So I'm just going to close that log for now. You then get the confirmation that there are no legislation updates found, so there's no new legislation after this one. And to check that that has applied in the current company, just make sure your process date is set in the new tax year. So I've got mine set to the 6th of April. And then if you go to your company tasks and then legislation, you can select the NI tab. And then you can see effective from the 6th of April, the employee rate of national insurance for standard rate contributions is that 8% as announced on the 6th of March. So that's how you apply that change. You need to be on version 30 and you need to have upgraded your data. I suggest that you log in as the manager user, or a user needs to be a user that has access to all employees. If you've got the same password for other companies, perfect. If not, you'll just need to log into the other companies and follow those same steps. So that is updating your NI rates, checking for legislation updates, and applying them. You can read that step by step as well by following the link in the slide. But we will move on to step 3 now and talk about updating your employees' tax codes. So at the start of each tax year, there are usually some global changes to make to tax codes, and this year is no different. You will need to clear week one, month one flags for all existing employees, so that tax is calculated on a cumulative basis moving forward into the new year. So we suggest using global changes for this because you can do it in a oneer and you can make sure no one is missed out. Now, because the personal allowance has been frozen, it remains at £12,570 per year. It means that there's no uplift required to tax codes ending L, M or N. And the emergency tax code for 2024 to 25 will remain at 1257L, and that represents the frozen personal allowance. However, depending on employees' individual circumstances, you may receive an individual tax code notice, a P9 notice, and you would need to apply those changes to the relevant employees. So if you have got P9 notices, you might want to apply those after doing the global change, and that way you can be absolutely certain that those employees end up on the right tax code, although it would be very rare for a tax code on an individual notice to be on a week one, month one basis at the start of a year. So let's show you the global change for this one. I'm just going to bring those slides down. So first things first, make sure your process date is set in the new tax year. So mine is already set to the 6th of April. And if I just show you the current tax codes for my employees, most of them are already on cumulative codes, but I do have one employee who is on a month one basis. So that's the one where we need to clear the week one, month one flag, which we could do in the individual employee record. But the best way to do it is using global changes. So if you click onto clear and then swap, that's going to highlight everyone in your employee list. And you can then go to tasks, global changes, across to tax codes, and then down to clear week one, month one flag. So you'll then see confirmation that this will clear the week one, month one flag for the selected employees. And I'm going to click yes to proceed. It confirms that they're successfully updated. And if you keep an eye on this tax code just here, as soon as I click OK, you'll see that that month one flag has been removed. And that is the only global change that you need to do in relation to tax codes. Now, you might receive individual tax coding notices either in the post or online. And if you still get them in the post, you can apply any changes directly within the relevant employee record. So you would go into the record, you would click on the Employment tab. Now you can set these up in advance. So if you click on the plus symbol next to the current tax code, that will then allow you to add a new tax code with an effective from date. And then you can type the tax code in and you can enter effective from, usually that would be the 6th of April for these P9 notices. So that's how you would set them up manually if you get the notices in the post. But if you do get them online, you can use the built-in secure mailbox in Sage 50 Payroll to apply the changes directly to the employee records. So this is really simple to do. Start by going to the e-submissions tasks down here in the bottom left corner. And then if you open IR Secure Mailbox from the list of tasks, and then if it doesn't check automatically, you would click on this New Mail button at the top, and then you'll see a progress bar move across as it connects to your HMRC mailbox, and then any new notifications should be organized into folders here on the left-hand side. So in this example, I have 2 P9 notices. So this is a notice of coding for the new tax year. You can view the individual notices by either double-clicking or selecting and clicking open. And that will show you the employee details, tax code to use, and the effective from date. And then you can either apply them one at a time, or you can select them all at the same time and apply them as a batch. So I just want to show you how you can select multiple notices because there's a few different ways. So I've just got the 2 in the list, but if I wanted to select everything in this view, I can clear the selection and then swap the selection using these 2 buttons at the top. And you can see there it has highlighted both of those notices. Or other ways to do it is you can hold down the Control key on your keyboard and then click on each individual notice you want to highlight. So that's another way of doing a multiple selection. Or a third way is you can hold down the Shift key on your keyboard and then click on the first and last notice in a list, and that will highlight everything in between. So if you do highlight more than one, you can then open them together. You can see all the details on screen. You can print these details. And the good thing here is we can apply these changes, and you can apply them early if you wish to. I'm going to click yes to continue. You can see the status for both of these shows success. And then if I close out of the mailbox, I'll just show you the 2 employees that we've updated. So employee 2 previously was on 1288L, and effective from the 6th of April has switched to 1257L. And then for employee 6, you can see previously they were on D0 and they've moved on to this K code. So that's process date sensitive. If you still had periods to complete in the previous year, it would use the previous tax code for those periods. So we have updated the tax codes by doing the global change to clear the week 1, month 1 flags. And we've then applied individual tax code notices. And if you get them online, top tip, use the secure mailbox. And we are running a webinar on this in April if you want to learn more. But you can do that to view and apply those notices all in one go. So 2 remaining steps for getting ready for the new tax year. So we're going to do these together. The next one is to apply for employment allowance if your business is eligible to claim this. So this needs to be applied for every tax year. These days it doesn't automatically carry forward. And you can usually claim it if you're a business or charity with employers' Class 1 national insurance liabilities of less than £100,000 in the previous tax year. So you might want to look at your reports for 2023 to 24 to see whether you are still eligible for this allowance. And you can read the full eligibility criteria on the gov.uk website. So if you are eligible, you need to apply, and you're going to do that in your company settings. Also in your company settings is the Small Employers Relief checkbox. So this enables you to reclaim more of the statutory parental payments that you're recovering from HMRC. So you get 103% of those payments recovered if you qualify for Small Employers Relief, as opposed to 92% if you do not. And you'd usually qualify for this if your total Class 1 national insurance contributions were £45,000 or less in the tax year before the qualifying or matching week. So let's have a look at how you set up both of these. So just bringing the slides down and go in full screen once again. For this one, you start at your company tasks, and you would then go into settings. So first, to claim employment allowance, from the details tab, click on the apply for EA button, and then answer the question about state aid. So you're being asked here whether state aid rules apply to your business. So they are not usually applicable unless you're located in Northern Ireland. So for this demo, I'm going to choose state aid not applicable. And then it's just a case of submitting the employer payment summary. So this is your first submission of the year, usually if you're claiming it. And you can see here in the important information, the employment allowance indicator here is set to yes. So I'm going to go ahead and send this by clicking submit. And you'll see that the progress bar is moving across. And once it's been received by HMRC, you'll see the confirmation message on screen. So that submission has been successful. And all you then need to do is to tick the box, confirming that you're eligible to claim employment allowance. And then you will see a message just advising that you won't get a confirmation letter for this. But if your claim is rejected, you will receive a message from HMRC. If you're part of a group, only one company or charity in the group can claim that allowance, But if you're in any doubt, check out the gov.uk guidance or speak to HMRC directly. But that was now set up, and at the end of month 1, when I run my P32, we will start to claim that employment allowance. The other setting here is for the small employers relief, and again, you should check this at the start of each tax year to see whether you are eligible or not. So I've already checked mine. My total national insurance was less than £45,000 in the previous tax years. So I'm just going to go ahead and tick this box for small employers relief. And then to save these settings, just need to click OK. So that's it done. And we are now ready for our first period of 2024 to 25. So that does actually lead nicely on to what's new for 2024 to 25. I'm going to run through some of the legislation changes, and then I'll pass back to Alice, who's going to show you some of the updates within version 30. So let's just start with the key legislation changes for the new tax year. So as we've just mentioned, tax codes are remaining much the same unless you receive individual P9 notices. And that's because the personal allowance remains frozen at its current level of £12,570. So emergency tax code remains the same. For PAYE, there are no changes to bands and rates in England, Wales or Northern Ireland, but there are some changes that apply in Scotland, and that's to employees that have a tax code starting with an S. And there's an introduction of a new tax band, the advanced rate of tax, and also an increase to the top rate of tax in Scotland. And you can view that legislation within your legislation settings. For national insurance, as we mentioned earlier, the budget announcement was that this will be reduced by a further 2%. So it's reducing from 10% to 8% for category A with effect from the 6th of April. So don't forget to do your legislation update to update that in your software. And some significant changes to national living and minimum wage this year. So with effect from the 1st of April, the national living wage will increase to £11.44 per hour, and it now applies to all employees aged 21 and above. So it used to be 23 and above for national living wage. It is now 21 and above. And the minimum wage rates have also increased for employees under 21. If you use the minimum wage check for your hourly paid staff, that should keep an eye on that for you and alert you if you're paying below those new minimums. For statutory payments, the rate of statutory sick pay is increasing to £116.75 per week. And the standard rate of parental payments, so maternity, paternity, adoption, etc., is going up to £184.03. Student loan thresholds, some of those have changed, so you can see the updated thresholds there on the slide. And for automatic enrolment, there's no change to the earnings trigger or the upper and lower level of qualifying earnings. So all of those thresholds remain the same. You can read more about this following the link on the slide. And if you want to see these legislation changes, quick tip for you, if I just bring the slides down, from your company tasks, just go into the legislation option. As long as your process date is in the new tax year, it will show you legislation settings for this year. So for PAYE, for example, in Scotland, from the 6th of April, there is this new tax band, the 45% rate, and then the top rate of tax is increased to 48%. And that only applies to Scottish tax codes. There's no changes to the bands and rates in the rest of the UK. As we saw earlier, this employee rate of national insurance is updated with a legislation update, and you can view the other minimum wage rates for the other ages on the minimum wage tab. A couple of other legislation changes just to make you aware of. Statutory paternity pay has been reformed in 2024 to 25, and these changes apply to babies expected after the 6th of April. So paternity leave and pay can now be taken within the first 52 weeks following the birth or placement of the child. It used to only be the first 8 weeks, so they now have a year to take the leave and pay. And it can be taken as either a single block of 1 or 2 weeks, or 2 blocks of 1 week. So there can be a gap in between week 1 and week 2, and it can take place any time within the first year of the baby's birth. Employees will need to give 28 days notice before the date they intend to take each period of leave. So the notice period for the dates of leave has been adjusted in line with these new rules. And I think Alice will show you a bit later that the SPP entry screen has also been updated to accommodate that change. And last bit of legislation just to be aware of is that there were changes to the working time regulations been introduced by the government to simplify holiday entitlement and holiday pay calculations. So that includes a definition of irregular hours workers and part-year workers. It introduces a method to calculate statutory holiday entitlement for these types of workers, and it introduces rolled up holiday pay as an alternative method to calculate the holiday pay. Now, I'm not going to lie, holiday pay and entitlement for irregularly paid workers is complex legislation. So I just wanted to make you aware of this because some of the changes apply to leave years beginning on or after the 1st of April. And we'll just signpost you to the gov.uk guidance, which you can read on this slide. So that's it from me for now. I'm going to bring Alice back and just going to have a quick run through of some of the new features and improvements in version 30. So over to you, Alice.
Thanks again, Duncan. Yeah, so a couple of new features and improvements to Sage 50 Payroll in version 30, some a little bit more obvious than others. Starting with probably the most obvious one, which is the new home page. Now this is set to your initial view when you first update to version 30. So it'll be the first thing you see when you log into the company. And I'll show you the home page in a moment, along with how to change the initial view so you can customize whichever view you wanted to see when you first open the program. And Duncan also just mentioned the legislation and the changes to statutory paternity pay as well. And he did mention that the way that you record that in the program is slightly different now. So I will be showing you that as well in the demonstration. There's also some improvements to the P45 starter form. So from the new version 30 of Payroll, when you're entering a new employee, the P45 year-to-date fields aren't going to be available when they shouldn't be entered. So for example, if you had an employee who's left their previous employment in a different tax year, then you won't need to enter year-to-date figures as they aren't relevant for the current tax year. So there's some slight changes to that as well. We've also got some kind of behind the scenes improvements too. So all of the automatic updates will run with elevated admin privileges now. And there's also the option to amend the duty start date in the pensions module too, which previously involved sending your data in for repair. So let's take a little look at a couple of those changes, and I'll just turn my camera off. We'll go back to Payroll, and straight away you can see that home page here. So as I said, this is your initial view, but on here you've got some different tiles. So you've got welcome to the home page, key dates for payroll year end as well. And these do change from time to time. So at the moment, quite focused on payroll year end, and of course, welcoming you to this home page. But do keep an eye on it because it will change depending on the time of year, any hot topics and things as well. But for example, with the key dates, if you wanted to learn a little bit more about these, just click view the calendar, and it's going to bring you straight to an article all about the key dates for payroll year end. So those dates that we mentioned earlier, of course, you've got the deadlines, the new tax year and things like that as well. And if you wanted to know what this date is, you do get a bit of information about them as well. So that's your kind of payroll year end key dates tile. You've also got one about the free webinars, checking for legislation updates as well. So that's probably quite a common one that will be used at the moment. So if you click on that, it does explain what Duncan's mentioned about applying the new NI changes as of the spring budget 2024. So it does explain how to do that. Obviously tools and check for legislation updates. So you've got that information there, nice and easily accessible. But it's essentially your kind of one-stop shop for all things payroll, really. So not only have you got them, but you've got the online services and things as well. And at the bottom, some quick links to Sage University, which is one of our great further support options. Payroll year end as well. So this will take you straight to the Payroll Year End Hub with the different steps that we've gone through in the webinars, and legislation as well. So that'll take you to payroll legislation. As you can see, obviously a nice article just summarising everything that kind of Duncan's gone over there as well. And that is your homepage. Now it is a new section on the left as well. So if you were in payroll, you can just click back to home to take a little look at that. Which is great there. And like I said, you can customize this initial view. So if you don't want to see the home page when you first open the program, all you need to do is go to View in the top left and Options. And once this window comes up, you're just going to click in the Environment tab, and you'll see for your initial view, you've got, it is kind of set to home normally, but I've changed that to payroll. So you can change it to anything. Any of these sections on the bottom left, you can change it to. So if I wanted to see, for example, the calendar when I first open the program, I'd set that to calendar. Or if you want the payroll screen with your employees, just set that to payroll and then click OK. And that's kind of the home page there. And Duncan also mentioned changes to statutory paternity pay. And there is, like I say, a slightly different way that you're going to record that now. So if we pretend that my employee number 9, they've given me notice and they want to go on paternity leave, I can go to my payroll links and you'll see an option for recording paternity. So if I click on that, the quick SPP window comes up. This is my favourite way of entering paternity pay. I just think it's easy with everything in one place. But if we say that the date of birth is the 12th of April, and I check that entitlement, the main difference is here. So you can see this table, and this gives you the option to enter the last day of work for the first week and the second week of leave because of that change. So because they can take now non-consecutive weeks, I could say that the last day of work for the first week of leave, it might be the 11th of April, for example, but maybe they don't actually want to take the second week until, let's just say, October. So it allows you to now put in that second week as well. So you've got that option there. I'll just show you the other way as well, because you can enter paternity pay differently in the actual employee's record. So if I open up the record and go to absence, we can click on SPP just at the bottom. And if I pop in that same due date, so the 12th of April, we can say that they were actually born on the 11th. Just kind of go through the normal things here. And again, you've got that table at the bottom. But one difference with recording it in the employee's record, if we put in their last day of work for the first week, the 11th, it does also come up with this message. So it asks, are you entering 2 weeks of statutory paternity pay for the employee? And if they were, just click yes, and that automatically adds in that next week. So following straight on from the first one. But of course, if they change their mind, they've got the option to change that in here too. So we could change that to something a little bit later. But everything else for paternity pay and the way that you record it has stayed more or less the same. That's kind of the biggest difference. So we'll click OK and just save this person's record. I did mention some other changes, so a few more minor changes, and they are all covered in a really helpful article. I just want to show you where you can find that as well. So if you go to the Payroll Year End Hub, I've just got to this by going to sage.co.uk/PYE. So I'll go click on Sage 50 Payroll, and there is a whole section all about what's new in Sage 50 Payroll version 30. So do take a look at this article if you do have time, just to kind of summarise all of those changes we've gone over. And you can also watch this recording of the webinar back if you do want to remind yourself of anything there, but that's kind of everything summarised there. So that's kind of mostly what I'd like to show you with the new features and improvements. Of course, we've got the home page there as well. But this kind of leads us nicely into further support. So I do want to make you aware of the further support that we've got available, especially around payroll year end, starting with our payroll year end part 1 webinar. So this goes over the installation and preparation side of payroll year end step by step, with some handy checklists and things too. You can register this for this by clicking the link on the handout, or of course by visiting sage.co.uk/webinars. We also have a whole range of other webinars throughout the year as well, and in April we've got some payroll spring clean ones as well. So we have some topics on the right, so the spring clean your payroll, minimum wage check, online pay slips, report favourites and selections, and the IR secure mailboxes too. You do also have the opportunity to earn a digital badge if you earn at least 3 out of the 5 on this list. So be sure to check those out. If they sound like something you're interested in, definitely get registered for them, and they'll be running throughout April. Another option for further support as well is, of course, our help centre, so you can access support guides, demonstration videos, recordings of our webinars and things as well. And of course, if needed, you can contact our experts on anything you need help with. And there's also Sage University. So here you can access free e-learning, product certification, bite-sized learning as well, just kind of generally expand your knowledge. And this is now accessible via the homepage, which I showed you as well. But that's brought us almost to the end of the webinar. But before you leave, you will be presented with a short survey. It does only take a second to fill out, but if you could leave any feedback or comments for me and Duncan, that would be really appreciated. We do take the time to read all of the comments and see if we can make any improvements on the back of the feedback as well. So that would be greatly appreciated. But on that note, I do want to bring Duncan back. See if we've got a few minutes left for some more questions. So back to you, Duncan.
So we've literally got about 2 minutes, so we'll probably do 1 or 2 questions for you at the end that I've picked out. Let's have a quick look. Quick one for you, Alice, on P60s. Can we do a combination of online and printed P60s? So online for current staff and printed for those that don't have access to online services?
Yeah, of course you can. You absolutely can do a combination of all 3 if you wanted. But remember, like I showed you the produce P60 step, you've got the option to click on all 3. So you could print them, even just for a company copy, you can print them out. But no, you can email online all of them.
Great, so you've got the flexibility there. And is it possible to upload historic P60s into Sage HR?
It is, and it's actually quite a straightforward process to do as well. You can find steps on it online, so if you typed in like upload historical P60s, for example, that'll talk you through. But all you need to do is set your process date back to the 5th of April for that relevant tax year. So if, for example, you wanted to upload last year's, just change your process date to the 5th of April 2023, and then just upload in the exact same way that I showed you in the demonstration.
Great, so the process date is the key there, isn't it? You might have time to ask us 1 or 2, Alice?
Yeah, we'll go for it, why not? So I've picked out a few as well, so let's go with this one. So I've received a number of employees' tax code changes effective from the 6th of April. Can these be applied now, or do I need to wait until April?
They can be applied now. As you saw in the demo, they have an effective from date. So if you're applying them from the secure mailbox, that new tax code won't kick in until your process date is on or after the 6th of April. Or if you're doing it manually, you can add that tax code with the effective from date, and that way it'll always use the correct tax code based on the process date. So you can do that early if you want.
Great, thank you. And then just a quick one as well. What's the earliest date I can send the employment allowance claim for the 24-25 tax year?
You can do it now. The earliest date was the 6th of March. So that's when HMRC opened for submissions for the new tax year. So you could, if you wanted to, if you were sure that you were still eligible, you can send that claim through for 24-25 now. Just make sure your process date when you do this is set into the 24 to 25 tax year, so 6th of April or later.
Perfect, thank you so much. But yeah, I think we'll leave it there for questions. I don't want to run over too much.
Great, so I'll wrap this up if you like. I think we've got a few questions just waiting to be answered in the Q&A, so we'll get those answers out to you straight away. I just want to thank everyone who's attended the webinar today for your time. Thanks for sticking with us to the very end of this session. A quick reminder, if you wouldn't mind completing the survey as you exit, we'd really appreciate any feedback that you have on this session. It really helps us to improve them moving forward as well. And don't forget, you'll get a follow-up email that we'll be sending about an hour after the webinar ends, which will include a link to the recording of today's session. So look out for that in your inbox. Unfortunately, we are out of time now, so we are going to be closing the webinar very shortly. But on behalf of myself and Alice and the team behind the scenes, thanks once again for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you on some of our other webinars in the near future. So goodbye for now.